Are you overwhelmed by mediums? Ever heard, don't use mediums, you don't need them? But thinking, well, why are all these artists using the mediums? Stick around to apply the medium selector guide to your work to see if it's a fit for you. Mediums can enhance our artwork, and it gives us greater control and flexibility. Mediums are added to paint to make them act a certain way. Mediums on their own act as an extender, or they help paint do something that you can't easily do with just acrylics by themselves. Mediums are like the glue that holds the pigments together, commonly known as a binder. And depending on the consistency, this determines the type of medium used to make the kind of paint that you like. For example, high flow paints with golden use fluid medium, and they have a milky consistency. And fluid paints is like a soft gel. And heavy body really uses a heavy gel or a regular gel. So if you think of the different kinds of paint, this is what happens with mediums as well. For instance, gel mediums thicken the paint, while fluid mediums thin out the paint, really making it great for glazes and washes, and yet still holding the pigment together. We can also add transparency and special effects. It's endless what you can do with mediums. Honestly, I absolutely love them. Let's simplify for what matters to you in your artwork. I once heard an artist say, don't use mediums, just use a lot of paint. And at the moment I thought, is this true? But I'm glad I didn't listen, because it has unlocked so many advantages by actually looking into it further. It's not for everyone. In fact, the bigger question is, why are we using it? I started using mediums when I was looking for something to thin my paint out that would keep the color intensity and not dissolve it or dilute it the way that water typically does. So water acts like a solvent, stripping away the color and dissolving the color. Mediums are binding that pigment so they hold the color together, and they can keep that pigment in integrity. So if you're looking for color integrity and thin washes, mediums are great. That's how I got introduced to mediums, with just that one idea. And this is a huge advantage and distinction of mediums, because when you think of what water does and how a lot of artists use water to add to their paints to thin them out, they're actually dissolving the paint. But mediums hold it together, and they do different things depending on what you're trying to do. So it can extend it the way water does, but instead of dissolving it, it is actually holding it together. I typically use a palette knife to apply them directly to the canvas or mix them in with the paint. They're super easy to clean up. A simple baby wipe will wipe it clean instantly. Or if you need more control with a brush, you can definitely use a brush, but don't use your favorite brush or a good brush, because it can ruin a brush over time. I find that if I wash brushes out immediately with the incredible brush cleaner, I can definitely still save my brushes, but I definitely use inexpensive brushes that I'm not too worried about if for some reason it doesn't rinse out properly. So let's get into the 5 ways you can check to see if you need a medium. The first question is, what is the medium doing in your artwork? What is the purpose that it's serving? This is a really important question to ask, because that way you have a perspective and an angle and you won't be overwhelmed. So viscosity is one of those angles that I look at. Viscosity is just a fancy way of saying how easily a medium flows and pours if it's runny like milk or slow and thick like honey. It's all about how sticky or runny something is, and this is what viscosity means. So if you need something runny or thick like honey, that is another indicator that you might need a medium. And consistency is another angle. Consistency is about the overall feel and how it might spread or hold its shape, or how lumpy or smooth it is. So these are the things that I look at on what do I need in my medium. So this is the first thing to check. The second thing I look at is opacity. And some mediums are designed to increase the transparency of your acrylics, making them ideal for layering and creating depth, creating glazes, creating glow effects. I absolutely love them for this. Other mediums increase the opacity, making them really solid and you can't really look through them. They're great if you're looking for bold brush marks or something that's very textured and covering large areas. So let's get into how you would go about choosing your mediums. So there's a few different categories for mediums, and I want to break this down as simply as I can. Gels come in different finishes. They come mostly transparent, but sometimes they do yellow. So different brands do different things, and mostly they dry transparent, but some do yellow. So you really want to check in with which brand you're using and what it's actually doing for you. But gel mediums are often packaged in tubs rather than squeeze bottles because of their thickness, and you would generally apply gels with a palette knife. Gels also come in different thicknesses and fluidity. So fluid is a type of gel. This would be a fluid. You can hear it. It's typically runny like milk or honey. A soft gel is going to be a little bit thicker, and a regular gel is going to be thicker, and heavier gel is even thicker. So those are the different kinds of types of gels: fluid, soft gel, regular gel, and heavy gel. Now, not all brands have that, but I like to think of it like that because the brand I use, which is Golden, does carry different types of thicknesses and fluidity. Then you have different finishes, which is really important to notice because all these gels come in different finishes. So we need to know what kind of finish you're looking for. Are you looking for a gloss? Are you looking for a semi-gloss? Are you looking for a matte? Are you looking for iridescent, or are you looking for a metallic? So again, these finishes are also included in these gels. This is a great example. This is a regular gel, and it was in a matte finish. And then we have pastes, and pastes, which are really opaque. And if you think of a paste, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's opaque, and it comes in different finishes and effects as well. Impasto paste, I like to think of impasto paste, at least the ones I've tested, they dry like a gel, but they're white and opaque. So they have a little bit more of a plasticky look to it. So I consider impasto medium more in the paste category because it's opaque and it's white. A gel is more typically transparent. Then we have light molding paste, and that is fluffy, dries matte, white opaque, and you can paint on it. And in some cases, depending on the brand, it is flexible as well. Then you have heavy molding paste, which is dense and it dries matte, white opaque, and you can also paint on it, but it's very heavy and very dense, as you can see. Then you have fiber paste, and this dense as well. It dries matte, white, opaque, and it has fibers that you can paint on. So it basically is a paste that has fibers in it, and it is opaque, and you can paint on it as well. And then you have things like crackle medium and sand texture gel. So there's specialty pastes. I'm not going to get into the detail of that, but know that those specialty pastes also exist. So let's talk about scenarios and different cases for using these mediums and why you would choose them. Fluid mediums are great for transparent layers. Fluid mediums are thinner than gel mediums, and they're designed to increase that flow and spreadability of the acrylic paint, which is why I said in the beginning that was the one thing I was looking for in the beginning. I was currently using high flow, but I was even looking for a way to make it more transparent while still holding the pigment integrity to the paint. In this case is a airbrush medium, a well-worn airbrush medium that I refill. On the back of the bottle, you will note here that it will show how transparent it is. So in this case, this is a airbrush medium. It's also been known as a high flow medium. A glazing liquid allows for transparent layers as well, but the main differentiator is that it's slow drying, where the airbrush medium will dry quicker. And again, this comes in gloss and satin and matte, all the good things. So regular gels are great for thicker transparent layers or collaging anything. I think it's a great resource for collaging things. I use it to mount linen to my boards. I prefer semi-gloss or a gloss because it's a little bit tackier and it is great for adhesion, mounting that linen to the board. Thick, heavy gels are great because they set up for a thick look that is transparent. And if you're looking for something that's setting up in a thick, transparent way, then a heavy gel would be great for that. And with texture being so popular, it makes sense why pastes are a hot item as well. But I also caution you that although they're great, not every painting needs this type of depth. It's a texture, it's a very specific kind of depth. There's all sorts of other ways to create depth as well. But in my opinion, you need to have a really specific reason for these and test it when it comes down to what you need and whether you need it to be flexible, light, heavy, or fibrous. And in my opinion, the impasto mediums look a little bit cheaper as a finish, and so they would work in other applications that might be aligned with the reasons why you'd use a heavier gel. So one of the common problems we have as acrylic painters is the paints dry quickly, and that can be terribly frustrating, especially if you're like me, blending colors and doing gradients in your color work, and you really need more drying time to blend before it dries on the spot. Nothing is worse in a painting than having it dry before you finish a section, and so I love slow drying mediums for this. This is a glazing liquid specifically designed for a slow drying as an extender for acrylic colors. Now, a lot of different brands have different names for this, but essentially the additive you're looking for here, it's more like an additive, even though you'd probably lump it in the medium category, but the additive really is helping the slow drying of the acrylic paint. And this is a huge advantage to help our acrylics when you want more time to work with the paint. And slow drying medium extends this so that we have more time mimicking more oil style paintings without actually using oils. So that's why I'm a really big fan of it. It's become a staple in my studio. This allows us to blend colors seamlessly on the canvas before they dry completely. So for a slow dryer additive, you're definitely looking for a slow drying medium or a retarder. They do function a little bit differently. This says on the bottle, retarder additive for slow drying, time for acrylic paints and mediums. I find that this is really great for glazing, where this might just slow down the drying time without really thinning it out. You only need a little bit of this, by the way. You do not want to add much of this. This is super strong stuff, and if you add too much of it, you will find your paint does not want to dry. So make sure you test out in small amounts. A little bit goes a long way. And if I want a transparent layer and I'm looking for extra time working with the paint and I don't want it to dry fast, instead of using my airbrush medium, which has been a staple for years, I will also opt for the slow drying glazing liquid, which allows me to do thin glazing layers. So the main thing here is that it allows me to slow down the drying time, but it also allows me to do transparent layers. And there's a ton of other additives. In fact, I could do a whole video just on additives, but I'm going to keep this short and keep you focused on what the mediums are doing, and more importantly, how you choose them in your work. So as you can see, there's a lot of different ways that you can use mediums. This is how I extend my paints, and I actually find that I don't need a lot of paints if I'm actually using mediums and extending it. So I'm a big fan of mediums. I have them in my studio as a regular staple. And if you're looking more in-depth information about mediums, what finishes and all that good stuff, check the link out in the description, where you'll find a link to my mediums handbook guide, where you'll see more detail about the mediums and a specific reference to different brands and what's available. And if you want to find your unique voice to discover which mediums really resonate with you and what is that unique perspective that you have as an artist, which I absolutely love helping artists with, check out my Awaken Inspiration to Creation framework. I think it will be really, really useful. See you in the next video.